Hello everybody, Michael the Librarian of Magic here, finding and cataloging the magical and pointing you to it. I have returned. Today is October the 7th, and I have another Disney drawing for you, another villain, another treat, and same disclaimers as usual apply. I talk about those in the first video in this series. With all that out of the way, today's drawing. Today's drawing, Monstro the Whale from Pinocchio, the classic Pinocchio. And this character originally came about in the original Carlo Collodi story that the film is based on. It features a giant shark that swallows up Geppetto and Pinocchio, a 5-story, mile-long shark, which apparently at the time was used by mothers to, warn their children of the dangers of straying out too far into the sea and stuff like that, that you might be swallowed up by this incomprehensibly huge shark. But Disney decided to make the character a whale instead of a shark. Even though it is sort of sharkish in nature. The character was originally modeled by Joe Grant, who ran the character modeling department at Walt Disney Studios back in the early days. They made 3D models of the skeleton and everything like that to mock it up, and then also various watercolor paintings were done by an artist on staff there named Gustav Tengren, who, those guys sort of helped flush out the essence of the character in terms of visuals. And then it was eventually animated. It was supposed to originally, apparently, be animated by Vladimir Titla, who from what I could originally tell, who originally animated Chernobog in Fantasia and some of the darker characters. The sorcerer Yensid in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, Grumpy in the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But for whatever reason, he didn't do it. It's speculated that they thought he might have got too carried away with it and made it a little too dark, or I don't really know what they mean by carried away. What I read was just he might have got too carried away with it. I don't even know if that's true or not, but whatever the reason, it ended up being assigned to Wolfgang Woolley Reitherman, who was one of Disney's original 9 old men. Woolley Reitherman sort of gave us the animated essence of the character. He made Monstro relatively intelligent. He had an edge of cunning that he sort of, had agency, and also that he was vengeful, like malicious, unlike actual whales who, except for in rare circumstances, are essentially gentle creatures. Monstro here is murderous and malicious and is willing to eat anything that comes in his path, including whole ships and people and whatever comes his way. So they made him pretty scary. And he's also very hot-tempered. When Pinocchio gets the idea to start a fire in his belly and, smoke him out and make him sneeze, as Geppetto suggests, it makes Monstro furious, so much so that when they escape him, Monstro chases them down vengefully. He doesn't just let them go. He's not just blindly dumb. He follows them down, actually, to his own demise. He ends up wrecking himself into a cliff. Spoiler alert for like a 80-year-old movie. He comes to his own demise there at the cliff. Woolley Reitherman really also added the sort of power and hugeness to the chase sequence, which is really a brilliant sequence and really just beautiful to look at and exciting and terrifying to watch. I've always felt that Pinocchio has some narrative structure issues. It just feels kind of herky-jerky to me, like you're watching 3 sort of held together vignettes that are crammed together in one movie. The beginning part where Pinocchio tries to go to school and is chased down by Stromboli, and then the second part with Pleasure Island and the donkeys, and then the third part with Monstro. They're sort of loosely connected together, but it just feels a little hodgepodge to me. But each sequence has so many brilliant memorable classic things that it's hard to deny the beauty and artistry of this film. The vocalizations of Monstro, he does have a voice actor. He doesn't really have a voice so much as a growl and, noises. But the vocalizations for Monstro were done by Thurl Ravenscroft, who is very famously known by pretty much all. You probably know him best as the voice of Tony the Tiger from Frosted Flakes ads. They're great. That's Thurl Ravenscroft. His voice is really unmistakable basso profundo voice. This was the first job he had with Disney, the first role that he inhabited, and was essentially uncredited for it. And unfortunately, too much of his work, I feel, was actually uncredited. But we all know who he is whenever we hear him, because his voice is really, really unmistakable. My favorite, one of my favorite Thurl Ravenscroft roles is Kirby the Vacuum from The Brave Little Toaster. I think that's one, and he was credited for that, and I think that's one of his more meaty roles that I really love. Famously, too, besides Tony the Tiger, people also recognize Thurl Ravenscroft as the singing voice of the song "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" from the 1960s version of the Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. He wasn't the voice of the Grinch, or that was Boris Karloff, who also narrated the special. But the song, the singing voice in the song, that's Thurl Ravenscroft. And just to bring things full circle, Cindy Lou Who, the voice of Cindy Lou Who in that original special, was June Foray, who keeps popping up in these videos about voice actors. Thurl Ravenscroft's voice is also featured all over Disneyland. If you've ever visited the Disney parks, you've definitely heard his voice. You can hear his voice featured on some of the tracks from the sailing ship Columbia, the Mark Twain Riverboat, the voice of Fritz and Tangaroa and some of the tiki masks in the Enchanted Tiki Room. He can be heard as one of the finale singers in It's a Small World. He's the voice of several of the singing pirates in Pirates of the Caribbean. He's the voice of one of the busts in the Haunted Mansion. You can definitely unmistakably hear his voice singing Grim Grinning Ghosts towards the end of the Haunted Mansion attraction. He's the voice of Buff the Buffalo in the Country Bear Jamboree, which you'd have to go to Walt Disney World these days to see that one. He's the narrator on the Disneyland Railroad. He's the voice of some of the singing bullfrogs in Splash Mountain. You can hear his voice featured in the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. His voice is everywhere. It's unmistakable and just wonderful and nostalgic for me to be able to hear. So the great Thurl Ravenscroft was the vocalization of Monstro here. In looking up the creations and interesting trivia about this character, or things to talk about with Monstro here, one of the weirder things that I found was in the other appearances of Monstro, how he's been used outside of Pinocchio, because believe it or not, he has popped up and in some really unusual places. He's been used, of course, in the Kingdom Hearts games and things like that, and various cameos that could potentially make sense, like the Little Mermaid TV show that they made back in the 90s. He's got a brief cameo there. But one of the weirder cameos I found was Monstro was used in a comic strip or a comic book back in the 90s, all the way until the mid 2000s, like 2007 or so. Disney published a comic book called Disney Adventures. Does anybody remember Disney Adventures? You could buy it in a supermarket checkout line. It sort of was the size and general idea of like an Archie comic, but it featured Disney characters. In the early 90s particularly, it was used to feature all the various Disney afternoon characters like Darkwing Duck and the Gummy Bears and DuckTales and all of that stuff. And in a 1994 issue of Disney Adventures, there was a comic story there featuring Bonkers, the police cat, called Whale of a Tale, which also features Monstro in a Bonkers story, and it truly is bonkers, in which Monstro is revealed to be this sort of polite, inadvertently destructive whale who was actually only an actor who was playing a villainous role in Pinocchio, and really because of his clumsiness and bigness and inadvertent destructiveness, he hasn't been able to find work since Pinocchio. And he eventually gets duped by a gang of crooks who are posing as a movie company, and they use Monstro to destroy these banks so that they can get in there and rob them. And so he's helping these guys rob banks inadvertently. He learns the truth of what's going on, and then eventually helps Bonker stop the bad guys. So of all the characters they could have used to insert into a Bonker storyline, Monstro the Whale. It'd be interesting to get my hands on that, because I think that's a really weird rarity and oddity, especially for this character. So that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll have to seek out some of those old issues of Disney Adventures. That'd be kind of a cool thing to get some of those. It'd be really nostalgic. Anyway, that's Monstro. A lot about Thurl Ravenscroft and some weird rarities and oddities. Monstro the Whale. I hope you enjoyed that drawing. Is Pinocchio one of your favorites? There's a lot of things that I like about Pinocchio. Like I said, there's some weird things about it too, but it's undoubtedly a classic, a masterpiece. It is really a work of moving art if you really stop and look at the artistry of it all. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that this is getting you sort of in the Halloween spirit, that you're enjoying these drawings. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Please follow me tomorrow when I'll be back with another one. Until the next one, bye-bye.